Okay guys, today we're starting our Unit 3 notes. This first section is going to be about neuroanatomy, neurocommunication, and the central and peripheral nervous systems. So let's get going. This soldier right here had a traumatic brain injury in Iraq, and doctors removed a large portion of his skull to allow for swelling of his brain. And that's a really cool surgery. It's very scary, but it's also really cool. I mean, look, he's missing a huge part of his skull, his brain swelled, and he's still living, and he's still functioning, and he's doing great. Let's start at the beginning. A study of psychology depends on understanding the connections between biology and behavior. And so what we're doing right now is called biological psychology, and it's the study of the relationship between biological factors and behavioral and mental processes. Every mental event can be correlated to changes in a person's biological activity. So understanding the links between biology and psychology would not be possible without a thorough consideration of the nervous system. And the nervous system is a network of cells in an organism that communicates external and internal information, processes stimuli, and regulates the body's reactions accordingly. Any study of biology and human behavior must begin with the brain, which together with the spinal cord makes up the body's central nervous system. And we're going to talk more about our brain in a little bit in the next video, actually. And the peripheral nervous system is also part of our overall nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system is a network of nerves that runs throughout your body, and we're going to talk about these in more detail. So let's get going. How do you react to the image on the left? Do you fight or do you flight? So we're going to talk more about this as we keep going. Again, the nervous system has two parts. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is made up of nerve cells that send messages between the central nervous system and other parts of the body. Nerve cells are called neurons. Neurons process information and communicate messages to other parts of the body through the production and transmission of chemicals, actually. A typical neuron consists of a cell body, dendrites, and an axon. The cell body contains the neuron's nucleus and produces its energy. And extending out of the cell body are thin fibers called dendrites. And these function like antennas. They receive information from other neurons and they transmit it to the cell body. And sending messages away from the neuron is a long branch called the axon. And at the end of each axon, smaller fibers called axon terminals branch out and transmit information to other neurons. So together, the bundles of axons make up the body's nerves. Although they don't technically belong to the neuron structure, these structures called glial cells actually hold the neurons together and aid in the transmission of impulses. And one type of glial cell is called myelin. And myelin forms sheaths of white fatty material that protects the axon and facilitates communication among these neurons. Neurons are able to transmit messages by releasing neurotransmitters, and these are chemicals that are stored in axon terminals. And when a nerve impulse reaches the junction of two neurons, this is called a synapse, and it encounters a tiny little gap. And this triggers the release of the neurotransmitters, which carry the impulse across the gap to the dendrites of another neuron. In this manner, nerve impulses are carried along a series of neurons, much like a flame travels along a fuse or dominoes falling until they reach their destination. So, and this is, again, a really good picture of an anatomy of the two neurons. The functioning of neurons can be affected by many factors like the use of certain drugs, which we've talked about, caffeine, marijuana, etc. Designed to act in conjunction with specific receptors, these drugs alter or inhibit the transmission of chemical signals. For instance, some drugs regulate the release of serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that plays an important role in cerebral functions and psychological states, and those include sex drive, appetite, mood. And such drugs can be used to treat depression, psychosis, migraines, and other disorders. Other factors likewise can have a detrimental effect on the transmission of nerve impulses. The ingestion of lead, for example, can trigger or block the release of certain neurotransmitters. So in infants, lead poisoning disrupts the brain's development, particularly its synaptic functioning. And as a result, young children who are exposed to harmful amounts of lead as infants often manifest cognitive and behavioral problems. So neurotransmitters are incredibly important. So if you want to take a second and look at this, down here at the bottom, there's several kinds of neurotransmitters, and we're going to talk about a few of these today. Acetylcholine is involved in the control of muscles, learning, and memory. Dopamine is involved primarily in motor behavior. We also have serotonin, GABA, glutamate. We're going to talk about all those things today. This is a really great graphic of divisions of the nervous system. You have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is pretty simple. It includes the brain and the spinal cord. And we're going to talk a lot more about the brain, but that's a different video note. But the peripheral nervous system includes millions of nerve cells that are spread throughout the body. And scientists, let me backtrack a little bit. The central nervous system, again, consists of the neurons of the spinal cord and brain, and the spinal cord is a column of nerves about as thick as a thumb that extends from the brain down the back. Okay, and there's the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, again, includes millions of nerve cells that are spread throughout the body. Scientists describe this complex system as being organized into two major subsystems. And the first is called the somatic nervous system, and this controls voluntary movement and transmits sensory information to the central nervous system. The second subsystem is the autonomic nervous system, and this regulates involuntary actions like breathing, digestion, and circulation of blood. The autonomic nervous system is actually divided into three parts. The sympathetic nervous system becomes active during times of stress and activates the body's fight or flight response. So that's that picture of that scary dog. Your autonomic nervous system part, which is the sympathetic nervous system, that's the part that is activated when you see something scary like that, fight or flight. The blood pressure is going to rise, your heart and breathing rates increase, and digestion is going to slow. The parasympathetic nervous system does the exact opposite. It controls body functions during times of no stress when blood pressure, respiration, and heart rate are functioning at normal levels. And then the third division is the enteric nervous system, and that controls the body's digestive system. And that's it for the nervous system and neural communication. Thanks, guys.